We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, January 12th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Grace.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. And also Wonmin's with us.
Good morning.
Good morning. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So it's Monday, the start of a brand new work week. And as we step into 2026, a lot has changed. From rising prices to shifting paychecks, even the minimum wage looks different this year. So Grace, what is a current minimum wage? And more importantly, how do you feel about it? Like, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, in South Korea, the minimum wage for 2026 is 10,320 Korean won per hour, which is a 2.9 increase from the 2025 rate of 10,031 per hour. And I do think that steady increases to the minimum wage is necessary, especially with, the high living costs and inflation these days. But then again, I do think that this can be kind of like a burden for small business owners who are now faced with paying their employees more regardless of profit. Proponents for minimum wage increase argue that it improves income distribution, supports the consumer-driven economy because people spend their earnings, and helps low-income families. And opponents are concerned about potential job losses, increased costs for businesses, and the burden on small and medium enterprises.
And I guess that's why the debate is still ongoing.
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts on this?
For me personally, as a freelancer, this concept of minimum wage is pretty distant from me. But economically, I think it's a reasonable increase because since 2020, the average annual wage increase has been between 2 to 3%. So in this year, 2026, there's nothing outside of the box, but it is a big increase if we look back to about 10 years ago compared to 2016, where minimum wage was about 6,001.
So while it may not feel dramatic year to year, over the longer term, the change is much more noticeable. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. A new year brings new changes, and one change the working age population is paying close attention to is the labor law. In 2026, some of the biggest shifts include the move toward a 4.5-day work week and new limits on work instructions outside official hours. So today on News Generation, we take a closer look at how labor laws are changing in 2026, how young workers are responding to these shifts, and what conversations still need to happen to better protect workers' rights. As we just saw in a video, 2026 is shaping out to be a year of major changes in how we work. Among all the labor law updates, some are drawing more attention than others. So Grace, when you look at the labor laws changing in 2026, what personally stood out to you the most?
Well, South Korea is actively piloting and promoting a 4.5-day work week as a national policy to improve work-life balance, tackle low birth rates, and boost productivity. Recently, the Economic and Social Development Commission agreed to reduce Korea's actual working hours from 1,859 hours to the OECD average of 1,700 hours by 2030. And as someone working in the corporate sector myself, I do think that Korea has very high working hours, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this will be implemented. And while I expect that a 4.5-day work week will additionally improve work-life balance here, at the same time, I'm like, from a business standpoint, it may pose concerns about potential harm to domestic demand, particularly in sectors like finance, and also the feasibility for small businesses.
But for many workers, especially young employees, the idea of a 4.5-day work week does sound promising, but it also raises questions about how realistic it is in practice. And now working hours aren't the only issues getting attention. Another major change focuses on what happens after we clock out. So Wonmin, can you tell us what this change is all about?
Yeah, of course. So there will be a, there will be a new law called No Texting After Work Law, which is pretty much self-explanatory. It's law that prevents people from from calling or texting employees outside of the office. Now, personally, I believe that it's a reasonable idea because I see a lot of people, friends, and my students suffering and getting stressed from contacts or calls once they're done working. But if you ask for a yes or no answer, I'm definitely closer to a yes for this one. But in reality, I think it's a little bit more complicated than just yes or no, because we need to understand that realistically, never contacting anyone who's not working is pretty much impossible. You know, things happen, there are urgent situations, abrupt changes in work schedules. So I think we must have a bit more flexible approach than outright just banning everything outside of working hours.
I agree. So it sounds like a step towards protecting workers' rights, but also one that depends heavily on workplace culture as well, not just the law itself. To learn more, we'll be speaking also with a law professor. That conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out Channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Professor Song Se-neon, Professor of Law at Kyung University. So hello, Professor. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Good morning. Good to join you.
Good morning. So what labor law changes should people be paying attention to in this new year?
Well, many things are happening, but I think your discussion kind of lays out the background. I mean, Korea has been kind of captured in the framework that was kind of outdated, meaning that there was a manufacturing-based society where the big firm versus a labor union, and then there are irregular employees and independent workers. The problems evolved around those settings, but not anymore. As you pointed out, there's a gig workers, platform workers, freelancers, and then there are a benefits and the rights to be distributed, like right to disconnect and work-life balance and the gender equality. Those things are kind of getting into the picture in a big way. I think that the Korean legislature has not really kept up with it, but there are some efforts. Now, 26, I mean, the carryover from the last year is a yellow envelope law, which is going to go in effect this year in March. That has kind of opened up a little bit of can of worm where the definition of employer has expanded and the rights of labor unions kind of expanded. That comports with that in fact we have a progressive government in place. So I think there is a nod to their voter base, which is the labor union and then worker side. But I think that there is a recognition that we need to kind of look at what is a work balance, life balance. I mean, the right to disconnect, and not having the right not to respond to the employer's communications after certain hours, or reducing the work hours, which kind of goes to the recognition that the Korea has the longest working hours in OECD countries. So we got to reduce those. And then there is a big question of whether the benefits that we get as workers could be kind of carried over when we become freelance workers or gig workers. So the whole concept of portability of benefits, that's something that they're looking at. I don't know if it will be resolved this year, but I think that the direction is there. I think that my big question is whether what's happening in other countries is also will contribute to Korean legislative landscape. For example, in Europe, there are reclassification of gig workers in certain sectors, and then there is a more shift towards rather than giving out the harsh punishment, focus on the disclosure, reporting, so that those kind of fact-based the discussion environment will enhance the problem-solving infrastructure. So I think that there is a recognition in the legislative community as well, and the politicians to address all these issues. But like I said, I'm a little bit critical of the kind of breadth and the speed of their addressing these issues. I think they have kind of chugged it too much to the courts to decide all these things. But I'm hoping that this year would be kind of a year of smaller reforms. We don't need kind of big sweeping reform, but we have to tend to a lot of the details of how to make it more 21st century rather than 20th century.
Thank you, Professor. Then what overall direction or goal do you think the government is aiming for with the latest labor law revisions?
I think that the kind of carrying over to our discussion, how to reclassify our workers so that we can be more considerate or the inclusive of the new forms of employment. And I think that has to do with whether we choose a stability or more rights to the workers. I think that the direction that I sense is that the stability, but not too rigid about it. When you become a president, I think that the President Lee Jae-myung is very cognizant of the fact that the economy, how we achieve a certain measure of growth and success, is that is going to be the accomplishment that the president can put a finger on. So that requires the cooperation and the success of the businesses. So he is in the balancing act where the workers' right is important as a voter base, but in terms of Korea going forward and addressing the younger generation's issues, there has to be a compromises, and the compromise in the areas of work-life, the balance, recognizing the benefits that has to be going around, not just to the regular workers, and that goes to the pension reforms as well. And I think that the one thing they are not really putting too much emphasis at this point, maybe because of the capacity, maybe because of it doesn't really materialize into the kind of front burner issue, is all discussion about how AI would affect the reality of the employment, especially for the younger people. So I think that the direction is, I see that they are cognizant and aware of these trends and challenges, and the piecemeal legislations address the parts of those issues, but I'm yet to see the kind of overall designs, what the required steps to address all these 21st century issues.
All right, so we'll have to unfortunately let you go a little early because due to time constraints, but thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today, Professor.
Thank you.
So we've just heard from a law professor about the labor law changes in 2026, the broader direction behind these revisions, and the issues that still need further discussion. So Grace, how are young workers responding to these many different changes in labor policies?
Well, many millennial and Gen Z employees in the workforce view these changes positively because they prioritize work-life balance and also their rights. In particular, millennial and Gen Z workers have been consistently showing strong interest in the 4.5-day work week. In fact, 84% of these workers said that a 4.5-day work week influenced their decision to join their respective companies. According to a survey conducted on Korean Gen Z workers, 47% of respondents said that they would use their free time from a 4.5-day work week to get some quality rest. Personal development came in second at 18%. Exercise and health management came in third at 12%. And 9% of respondents said that they would spend more time with their families.
Right, so for many young workers who value a work-life balance and personal rights, these changes are being welcomed, especially the idea of a 4.5-day work week. But not everyone sees this as a win. So on the other hand, Wonbi, what are some of the concerns that are being raised by young workers?
So one of the labor unions made up of mostly younger generations, they commented that 4.5 workday without any deduction in compensation is unrealistic. And on top of that, more people expressed concerns about decrease in total productivity, workflow gaps, staffing gaps, fairness, and equality. So for example, how will banks or customer service run on Friday when we only work half a day, less than 5 days? And I think the only way to find this out is by actually trying it. But the biggest overall concern is, can the shorter working time be implemented without damaging the company's performance or earnings?
Right, so on first thought, this idea does sound appealing, but questions still remain about whether it's realistic, especially when it comes to wages, productivity, and fairness across industries. But based on the data, what does Korea's labor environment actually look like right now, Grace?
You know, South Korea consistently ranks among the OECD countries with the longest working hours, with Koreans working 130 more hours than the average.
Wow.
In the last 10 years, though, we have seen working hours decrease by around 200 hours. But Korea remains a high-hour country, with Koreans still working more than those living in the US or Japan. And the reduction in hours has been partly due to the 2018 implementation of the 52-hour work week, which is down from 68, shortening maximum hours and increasing paid holidays. However, figures still remain higher than average because, Korea has a smaller proportion of part-time workers compared to other nations, as well as a higher share of self-employed individuals, which contribute to these longer hours.
Right, it is a big issue that Korea is working such longer hours, but that's not the only issue that is in hand right now. It's also about how effective that work is right now. So, what do the numbers tell us about productivity and working conditions?
So unfortunately, it's not the best. Despite having higher working hours than most other developed countries, we're still resulting with less productivity per hour. Let's take a look at the stats for numbers. So this data is from the Ministry of Employment and Labor, and it shows the workforce productivity from different countries. So South Korea has $51 per hour, Italy has $69 per hour, Germany at $83 per hour, and the USA lastly at $84 per hour. Now, as we can see, Korea is far behind in terms of work productivity per hour. And on top of that, we have a problem with using vacations too. So according to a survey, 80% of the respondents were not able to use their 15 paid vacation days, which is legally the minimum number of vacation days that you should get. And the biggest reason for this was that leaving their desk will leave their teammates or their co-workers with more work. And people who answered that they can use their vacations freely were only 40%, and it gets even lower to 30% if we just count the answers from the MZ generation.
So even with long working hours, productivity remains low and many workers still struggle to take basic time off. So that brings us to what also hasn't been fully addressed. So what labor rights issues do you think need to be discussed further moving forward?
Well, industry experts say that other labor-related issues that have yet to reach a tripartite agreement between labor management and government still need to be addressed in future negotiations. And these important issues that affect office workers like me include the improved flexibility of working hours that come with policies regarding maximum overtime hours, overtime caps, and increased paid time off. And personally for me, I would rather have the option to just work hard while I'm working and then take time off once I've completed my tasks, rather than being allotted like a set time for me to do work each day. And so, in the future, I hope that there is more consideration to labor policies that will give both workers and businesses more freedom to boost work efficiency while at the same time improving work-life balance.
So far, we talked about the long-standing structural issues that directly shape workers' daily lives. And there's another group that's often left out of these discussions. So Wonmi, what about the non-regular workers such as freelancers or contract workers?
Yes, people like me. So overall, the non-regular workers are much more vulnerable to labor rights because most of freelancers or non-regular workers are in the gray zone of legally being a worker but not being fully protected like a full-time worker. So I believe that there must be additional laws that sets out the right for non-regular workers as well. And I'm not necessarily asking for an increase in our guarantee or rights, but a law that sets out and explains what we are guaranteed legally and what we are not.
As labor laws continue to evolve, the challenge will be making sure these changes don't just look good on paper, but actually improve the way people work and live. For younger workers, labor laws aren't just policy. They shape daily life, career choices, and the quality of life. And 2026 may mark a turning point for labor reform, but the conversation about workers' rights is just getting started. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Grace.
Thanks for having me.
For coming in. Also, Wonbin.
Always a pleasure.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope you have the best day. We are News Generation.